This morning, Scotland's Auditor General, Stephen Boyle, said this to the Parliament's Public Audit Committee about the £300 million estimate the SNP say it will cost to build 2 ferries. This is a direct quote from the Auditor General. It would be folly to suggest that is a reliable figure that will be spent to deliver the vessels at this stage. So will the First Minister continue to defend his government's estimate for these ferries, or does he agree with the Auditor General? That would be folly.
First Minister.
Well, what I would say, and of course I was listening to the evidence this morning, and I'll read the rest of the evidence later on today. Douglas Ross will be aware, of course, the figure that was provided to the Public Audit Committee on the 22nd of December last year from the CEO of Ferguson Marine. That is made up of a number of different factors. The Scottish Government is now reviewing these projections based on independent advice. That process of due diligence, which is of course important in any procurement, of course, in any programme of this size, of this scale, but particularly given the cost overruns, even more important in the case of Ferguson's Marine. That process of due diligence is to conclude within the next few weeks. Regardless of that, of course, I repeat what has been said before when this question rightly has been raised by members of the opposition. It is unacceptable that we've had these cost overruns, the fact that we have had the delays to both 801 and 802. And again, once again, as First Minister, to island communities for those cost overruns and for those delays. But we are focused on getting these vessels complete so that island communities will see the benefit of these vessels.
Douglas Ross.
I think even the mic operator had given up on that answer and switched it off, because there was absolutely nothing there. Only a party that bought a camper van for 100 grand could think that paying hundreds of millions of pounds for 2 massively delayed ferries is a good deal. And we all know from the scandal engulfing the SNP that they really struggle with finances. But this is getting ridiculous. So will the First Minister stop the secrecy and be honest for a change? How much higher is the real cost to taxpayers going to be to deliver these 2 ferries?
First Minister.
I'm not sure I've taken too many lessons on financial literacy from the party of Kwasi Kwarteng and Liz Truss, presiding officer. But on the important issue that Douglas Ross is absolutely right to raise in this chamber, what I have said is that there is rightly a process of due diligence underway. That process will conclude in the next few weeks, and of course we will make it known what the result was of that due diligence. What I will never shy away from saying, rightly, that of course the cost overruns and the delays in relation to these 2 vessels is unacceptable. The island communities that are frankly frustrated and angry at those cost delays, those cost overruns and the delays, I completely accept their frustration and their anger. And therefore, we will continue to invest in Ferguson's Marine. We'll continue to do what we can to get these vessels ready in relation to the updated timescales. But that due diligence is important, and of course that is due to be complete in the next few weeks.
Douglas Ross.
I mean, the Auditor General knows the 300 million figure is folly, but it seems that the First Minister doesn't. He doesn't have a clue about the actual cost it's going to be for taxpayers here in Scotland. The bill for these vessels so far is already 3 times more than the original contract. But it gets worse, what we heard this morning, and the First Minister said he was listening to the evidence. So he will have heard the Auditor General reveal this morning that the bonus system for highly paid executives at Ferguson Marine is still in place. The 2 ferries are not fit to sail, the costs keep spiralling out of control, and islanders continue to be left without vital lifeline services. So, First Minister, what on earth could these bonuses possibly be for?
First Minister.
Well, again, I won't disagree with Douglas Ross, or neither with the Auditor General, who, of course, the Section 22 report earlier this year made it clear that these bonuses should not have happened. They should not have been paid. I agree. If Douglas Ross will listen to the answer, I will give him genuinely an answer to the question that he is absolutely right to raise.
we will hear the First Minister.
Now, the
Thank
former
you.
Deputy First Minister made it clear his anger. We share that anger. I share that anger at the fact the bonuses have been paid. The bonuses that are being paid, of course, relate to a decision made by the Remuneration Committee of Ferguson Marine without consultation with the Government in November 2022. And those bonuses, I have asked if they can not be paid. Of course, the advice coming back is that they are a contractual obligation. Now, for future bonuses, for any future discussion or consideration of bonuses, I have made it clear there should not be bonuses paid in relation to vessels 801 and 802. So that has been made clear. The Chair will take forward, of Ferguson Marines will take forward that work. It is my expectation, the Government's expectation, and the Chair of Ferguson Marine knows this absolutely well, that there should not be bonuses in 23-24, the current financial year that we're in relation to this year, in relation to vessels 801, 802.
Douglas Ross.
On every front, the SNP is engulfed in scandal, secrecy and a shameful waste of money. They are groaning about a waste of money when the First Minister has just accepted how much this is going to cost taxpayers. This week, the SNP's ex-treasurer, Colin Beattie, said it wasn't me, Gov, when he was asked about the notorious camper van before abruptly changing his mind. And Humza Yousaf has said he isn't sure if Scottish Government ministers are using burner phones. That's what the First Minister said. This is all starting to look like an episode of Line of Duty, but it's also a massive distraction preventing the SNP from getting on and delivering these vital services to island communities. And the problem for the First Minister is he has been personally involved in this ferry scandal from the very beginning. He was there at the SNP conference in 2015, beaming beside the disgraced Derek Mackay when the contract was announced. In 2016, he was behind Nicola Sturgeon, hoping one day he would be the First Minister to launch a ship with painted-on windows. And he was the Transport Minister inspecting the yards for years. Presiding Officer, we found a picture of the First Minister when he was Transport Minister visiting one of the yards. He was there that day to mark the halfway point in the build of these ferries. The only problem for Humza Yousaf is that picture was taken at the halfway point, according to him, in December 2016. More than 6 years ago. First Minister, that wasn't the halfway point. It wasn't even the start of this sorry saga. So how is the First Minister, who got us into this mess, going to fix it?
Before the First Minister responds, I will just remind all members that we do not use props in the chamber. First Minister.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a sign of Douglas Ross's real desperation, pathetic schoolboy tactics, inability to raise.
Thank you, members.
An inability, actually, to address what is a really serious issue, because I agree with the opposition when they rightly state the anger of island communities that these ferries have not been completed. So I give an absolute commitment, an absolute guarantee to those island communities that we are focused, and of course Ferguson Marine will receive the resources that are required on the back of that due diligence that is being done in relation to the cost. So there are things that we should apologise for, and we will apologise for as the Government. What we won't apologise for is, of course, saving hundreds of jobs in Port Glasgow at Ferguson Marine. And Douglas Ross is shaking his head. I'm not surprised. He, of course, belongs to a party that is put...
First Minister, if you will just give me a moment. People are gathered here to hear questions put to the First Minister, to hear the First Minister respond. Can we please ensure that that is possible? First Minister.
And the reason, of course, why Douglas Ross was shaking his head when I was mentioning the fact that we have saved hundreds of jobs at Port Glasgow at Ferguson Marine is because he belongs to a party, of course, that decimated communities up and down Scotland and left workers on the scrap heap, Presiding Officer. And he, of course, decided in his question to take a swipe at the SNP. Can I remind him, of course, that this week the SNP did release its membership numbers. I'm pleased that we've seen an increase in our membership numbers over the last few weeks. and the Tories, of course, demanded that we release our membership figures. We've done that. Of course, Douglas Ross does not practice what he preaches. He hasn't released his membership figures. There is a word for people that don't practice what they preach. They're called hypocrites, Presiding Officer.